say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name, kind of like different facets of our core personality, if you will. Or maybe our different formats are different personalities altogether. Hello, friend. But they all already have a name, and thus we slide down that slippery slope. Are you following us? I hope you're following us. My name is Kylie, and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, via Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and now Amazon Music to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Gotham, the Marvel shows on Netflix, Stranger Things, iZombie, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Good Place, The Crown, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, and Grace and Frankie. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Freaks and Geeks, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Americans, Reign, and Friends. Plus new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld, Riverdale, Fuller House, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, How to Get Away with Murder, Will and Grace, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The DCTU series panel will catch up on the first two seasons of Black Lightning, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series will talk season 3 of The Next Generation. We'll be launching new panels covering Charmed, the Breaking Bad universe, This Is Us, The Orville, Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Called the Midwife, and The Animaniacs. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll put out some musical stops for our Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. We'll revisit one of the all-time and most watched classic sitcoms, MASH. We'll become embroiled in all of the crazy plot twists of Revenge. We'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends, and we'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to our website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Direct feedback is good, though. Don't send your dark army fixers to do your dirty work. We can all agree to disagree. Today, we're around the water cooler and concluding our retrospective series in which we look back at a 4-season techno-psychological thriller that aired on the USA Network and that just ended its run this past December. Hey, better late than never. In addition, if you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU, ! will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully like Elliot when he's working well with MrRobot, or don't hold up as well like Elliot when he tries to ignore the existence of MrRobot. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes, where we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for a time. And today, that show is MrRobot. This is the third of a 3-part retrospective series in which CPU looks back at this acclaimed show. In this third part, we're discussing Season 4, which aired from October 6th, 2019 to December 22nd, 2019, with a total of 13 episodes. To remind you, gentle listener, MrRobot is an American drama thriller television series created by Sam Esmail for USA Network. It stars Rami Malek as Elliot Alderson. When the series starts, Elliot works at a cybersecurity company named AllSafe as a cybersecurity engineer. Constantly struggling with social anxiety, dissociative identity disorder, and clinical depression, Elliot's thought process seems heavily influenced by paranoia and delusion. He connects to people by hacking them, which often leads him to act as a cyber vigilante. He is recruited by a mysterious insurrectionary anarchist known as MrRobot, played by Christian Slater, and joins his team of hacktivists known as F Society. One of their missions is to cancel all consumer debt by destroying the data of one of the largest corporations in the world, E-Corp, which Elliot perceives as Evil Corporation, and which also happens to be AllSafe's biggest client. MrRobot was a show requested by a few like-minded masterminds and some of our resident couch potatoes, to wit, panelists Jeremy, Amy, Julianne, Aaron, and Dave, the latter two of the Mr. Rewatch podcast, which lived with the show episodically until its conclusion, reconvened around the water cooler in March 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic descended upon the United States. They were eager to tell you that this is what democracy looks like and to tackle the second half of this complex, richly woven thriller. Last week, however, in our looking back at Season 3 episode, you, gentle listener, would have learned that the MrRobot Seasons 3 and 4 discussion proved to be the longest individual recording session that Couch Potatoes Unite! Ever clocked in the history of our podcast, which is about 5 years old and covers many shows. This means, friends, that our panelists engaged in such a passionate, involved discussion about MrRobot, particularly about Season 4, tonight's conversation, and the series' ending events, that this singular recording ended up being about 4 hours long once finished. Since we try not to push past a 2-hour limit, and that's a guideline, for any given episode, because we admittedly have had some lengthy episodes in the past with equally involved but different chats, this talk was broken up into 2 separate episodes in lieu of the nature of the series we're analyzing. Therefore, here we present the Season 4 half of that discussion. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists watched all episodes of MrRobot and discussed very highly sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched any of MrRobot and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Good.
Hey.
Are you ready to talk about the series conclusion
Yes.
of Mr. Robot?
Yes.
Yes. I'm so excited that you've all seen all the episodes.
Finally, right?
Me too.
Yes.
The expressions in the room will be so much different, and I'm very excited to see it. Well, before we get too far into that discussion, what I have to do first is to take your temperature as a panel along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do, and that's because your opinion may have changed from Seasons 1 and 2 to Seasons 3 and 4, not to mention the fact that I have tweaked the character question because there are more characters, and then there were not as many characters that went away, and then some of the characters changed their place in the show. So I'm going to ask you how you feel nowadays. Are you ready? Now that we've watched the whole series?
Yes.
All right. So, how do you feel about MrRobot having finished all 4 seasons collectively as a panel? Okay. Did you think this show is utter genius? You watched all of it hungrily. Otherwise, you would never be satisfied until you broke down all of its components and learned all of its secrets. You think MrRobot could rule the world if people only gave it the chance you did, like Fernando Vera. You adored this show because of how well plotted it all is, even if it had a slip-up here or there. You were intrigued by the match of masterminds, that's in quotes, at the fore of the story, and the divide only by philosophy, if not by tactics, and are willing to forgive any alleged sins and to defend it until your dying breath, like Minister Ji Zhang, aka White Rose. This show is a part of you in ways that you cannot quantify, qualify, or explain. You love it in the way you love a family member, real or not real. Sometimes the story can be frustrating, especially as you don't always know what is real. Sometimes watching the show helps you to see parts of yourself you never realized were there, like Elliot Alderson. You still like this show quite a bit, though you adored it at first, particularly for the main character, the motif, the topsy-turvy storytelling. At the same time, it wasn't quite what you expected it to be, and that falling short of expectations left you feeling a sense of anticlimax about the whole thing, a sense of disappointment, but also a resolute resignation to the idea that you would finish the journey no matter what it cost, like Tyrell Wellick. Did you love the Elliot character as well as the strong female characters represented in this cast, but you can't help feeling confused and or off-put by some of the character decisions that are made at times. They leave you feeling uneasy or unsettled, like Angela Moss. Did you love the Elliot character and the general spirit behind the show and the society-disrupting hack at the story's center, but you do find yourself irritated by the fact that the show is told from Elliot's point of view most of the time, which influenced you to stop watching for a period and or to try to relate to other characters instead, like Darlene Alderson? Did you find the show sobering? You thought you had it figured out and were innately impatient with the Elliot character for a while, but with each new twist and revelation, you decided the whole viewing experience surprised even you at times and was a worthwhile act of love, like Edward Alderson, aka MrRobot. Did you think the show was so random you really watched it because that was what was expected of you, and for the occasional fun moment, like killing someone with an axe, not because you had much of a stake in any of it in the end, though you'd probably read the novelization of it if one was ever published, like Irving, the Dark Army Fixer? Were you curious enough about the show to investigate it by watching it, but found that it was far darker than you were bargaining for, and you didn't know how to feel about it in the end, other than completely wearied from the emotional ups and downs? In fact, you feel that watching the show was more detrimental than desirable, like Agent Dominique DiPiero. You have no specific interest in the show. You view it as a means by which to acquire and to consolidate power. In fact, it's the villain, the corporation in this story, that intrigues you most, and how nothing really is as it seems, or is as black and white as the show's red herring leads you to believe, like Philip Price. You don't care for the show much. You just showed up to get the job done and to ensure that others did the same, no matter how violently, like Janice, the Dark Army Fixer. Or you abruptly stopped watching because you felt you simply had to give up and start something new, or, spoiler, you died, like Joanna Wellick, who would like to start. Sometimes this happens.
I'm Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
Hi.
I think this time around I am still a White Rose because
Yes, because you tried to insert that the last time
This time you
when it
can
was
really
not
be White Rose.
on the thing, but that's fine. Everything is fine.
it was my psychic powers hard at work. I'm like White Rose because I feel like a lot of times in the show I felt like I knew better than everyone else, and if they would just follow my direction and listen to what I was saying, everything would have turned out a lot better than it did. There was a few moments where I thought, like her, I was going to throw something at the wall and rage out because people weren't listening to what I wanted them to do. Yeah, but so I'm White Rose.
Nice start to the conversation. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Hello, I'm Julianne.
Hi, Julianne.
I would say definitely Elliot. The show is part of me in ways I can't quantify, qualify, or explain. Sometimes it can be frustrating. You don't always know it's real. I often find myself trying to watch this from Elliot's perspective, or who we believe Elliot to be, and I'm just kind of along for the ride, and I feel as confused as he does, and I find myself just watching it and just waiting to see what happens next, just constantly waiting to see.
Do you remember who you were last time?
I think I was Tyrell.
You were.
Yep, I think I was.
So, does that mean you slipped a little bit? Because he was in the adoration column.
Yeah, and I think Tyrell's character changes a little bit. He has
Does.
some realizations, so yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Welcome back, Julianne.
Thanks.
It's Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hello. So, I think I only answered Elliot last time. I'm pretty sure. Did I mix it up? I was trying to mix it up a little bit. I can't remember.
I don't remember if you had multiples. I do remember Elliot.
So I'm still a little bit Elliot for all the same reasons that Julianne mentioned, but I am definitely Vera. I love the show. I think it's just wonderful. I was one of the people asking to do it, and I'm glad that we are, and I think everything...
She means on the podcast.
On the podcast. I'm sorry.
Did you write Sam Aspinall?
I did, BFFs. So I think this show is genius, and I've said it throughout that I think it's genius, and I was hoping that the last season would be just as genius as I was hoping, and I think it was, but we'll talk about that later. So a little bit of Elliot, for sure, still that, but definitely Fernando Vera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Amy.
Thank you.
So mine has changed this time, I think.
Okay. What's your name?
So I'm gonna. What's that?
What's your name?
Hi, I'm Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Hello.
I think that my character has changed this episode, actually. So this time I would choose Philip Price. I think that villainy is done really well in this show. And in these 2 seasons in particular, I'm interested in how thin the line between good and evil is. I also really like seeing women characters doing evil stuff. I just find that kind of fascinating. So a good 2 seasons for me to pick Price, I think.
Nice.
Welcome back, Erin.
Hey, I'm Dave.
Hi, Dave.
For a rewatch. Yeah, I don't remember who I picked last time. I know this is a middle-of-the-road show for me. It's kind of in the middle of the pack of all my favorite TV shows. I'm enamored with the Irving character, so I'm going to pick Irving.
Okay.
I don't necessarily agree with... I don't find the show confusing, but I do, I kind of watch it as a... What's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of more, technical, not so much driven by the plot, but more like, oh, that was a great episode.
Okay. I think last time you were MrRobot, and I feel...
That sounds right.
Yeah, and I feel like Erin was actually Tyrell as well. Hesitant to say so. There were a couple that were. I guess
No,
I'll...
I was.
Yeah. I guess I'll be Tyrell because...
Yep.
You said you were sheep. Easily led
Right.
viewer.
I'm easily led along by the storyline.
Well, welcome back to everybody. Of course, my name is Kylie. I'm moderating as well as participating. I think last time I was Elliot. I would be White Rose and Elliot this time. I'm going to pick 2 because there are a couple of bones that I have to pick with the overall show in terms of the character progression. I think Elliot's story was particularly well-rounded, beginning, middle, end. Brilliantly executed. We'll talk about that. Ancillary characters, not all of them were well-rounded, and I feel like some of them ended up being devices, which felt a little bit like a cheat. But I'm willing to defend it till my dying breath, though I will not self-inflict, spoiler, with a gunshot to prove my point. So, season 4, it all comes to an end.
Oh, man.
So, all of the things we've been watching, Dave, in our last episode, you billed that we would have answers to our questions, and I think that largely is true. Would anybody disagree? Jeremy, you looked up.
You said we would have answers to all of our questions. I still have questions.
Some questions.
I didn't say all of them. I just said there's a lot.
I said did I say all of them? I said to our questions.
Oh, that implied that our questions were all answered, and they are not all answered still.
So some major questions are answered.
The
right?
major
Yes.
questions were answered.
There is one burning question I still have that was never answered and never will be answered.
What was in the bag? No, there's a lot of questions.
What was in the Fixer's cheeseburger bag?
Where can I get some red
Question
wheelbarrow
that was
food?
unanswered.
What?
Yeah, where can I get
Oh, I was just asking what the unanswered question is.
The
Yeah, what-
machine.
the
White
machine?
Rose's machine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God.
I thought
Let's
I
start
missed
with
it.
that. Let's start with
I
that.
thought
then.
that was the one element of the 4th season that I thought was very poorly done because I thought I had missed something the whole time. I'm sitting here going, I literally was rewinding episodes trying to find what I missed, thinking like, oh, they showed us what this big grand design machine was going to do, and I missed it.
So one of the questions we asked that nobody wanted to answer because the 3 who had seen the series were like, nope, that gets answered, is what is the plant? What are we supposed to know about the plant? The Washington Township plant is the cover for this dangerous nuclear-powered machine which leaks and causes the aforementioned leukemia that kills Elliot's dad and Angela's mom. But that is the question. What is the machine?
And all through a lot of the seasons, I was toying with it's cloning, it's time travel. I did at one point hint on the alternate reality thing, but I thought it would be a digital aspect because of the computer hacking.
I was getting major Fringe vibes, especially. Has anybody watched Fringe?
Oh yes,
I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. This is what this was reminding me of because it started with White Rose's flashback episode and how we learn that she really feels she's a woman and that her one true love, who accepts her in all her forms, is killed. And she keeps going on about this new world, new world, new world. And that's also what Angela is singing right up until she, spoiler, dies in the season premiere of season 4. So I thought we were I did not, and because I did not miss the Back to the Future Part 2 reference, that's why I called it out. I thought we were talking about an alternate 1985, and I started wondering, are we really in the alternate reality here and watching everything that's led up to getting us there, or are we going to go into an alternate reality? Of course, the series finale / the penultimate before the series finale, which is in 2 parts if you watch it, answered without answering a little bit that question. But I still don't understand what the machine is. Speculate.
Well, and my thing is, she has this controller people. It's like she showed them something. What did they see that led them to believe that machine was going to do what she said it was going to do?
Dave, are you going to say something?
I think Aaron
I was going to say something.
Okay.
So, and it really took me to the end to come around to this position, but I thought, am I supposed to see White Rose as sort of a mad scientist character?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing I think that, she has in common with Angela and Elliot is this pervasive grief that just interferes with their sense of reality. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, and she plays off of that grief, I think. So I thought, is she just a little bit delusional, and has kind of built up this project in her mind because of this tragic loss that she's had in the past? So that's maybe not a correct interpretation of it, but that's how I started to see her, where I thought, because there's involvement with nuclear power and we kind of see that tour of the plant at some point where they are talking about this better future. Has she sold herself a bill of goods here?
I've had some similar thoughts, although you've expanded a bit more on it about, and I really honestly, until season 4, didn't make the connection between the loss and how that affects somebody like psychologically and mentally, or mentally and emotionally. But it's possible that this whatever this is, it could be her, not a reality in terms of like what it will actually do. But did you say delusional, or did I just say that?
She said
I think
delusional.
that is a word that I kind of thought of as well, going into season 3 and 4 with respect to what is this thing, and are we going to get answers on it? But
one thing, I literally stewed about this for a while because I was White Rose in the first part of the podcast, so I was very angry.
When it wasn't eligible.
I literally had to reconcile with myself the fact that she was absolutely batshit. Can we say batshit?
Yes, we can get away with most things except the F word. Continue.
She was batshit crazy, and she was like Charles Manson, and that she was so charismatic that she got other people to believe her batshit ideas.
yes,
That's the only way I could reconcile it with myself.
For me,
I think that's a good take.
For me, it's a question that I had, and it's one that I don't mind that I don't have an answer for. I actually kind of like that I don't have an answer for it, because it does leave it a little bit up to my interpretation of what I think. Do I think that they saw an alternate reality? I don't know. Do I think that there was a time travel element to it? I don't know. But I really like the way that the rest of the story played out. So for me, like, I had that question, and I'm okay with it not being answered.
I'm okay with it not being answered. I agree. To me, it's not so much what was the machine, though. So let's now go back to the beginning of the season. It's the proof. What so Charles Manson is an interesting parallel that you draw there.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Because now let's get into the Angela rants. This is the season premiere, so we're there. She's learned about Price being her father. She starts demanding revenge. He's wired. The Dark Army's listening. White Rose is listening. We find out that Price and White Rose, sort of seeded in season 3, really hit home in season 4, that they have this interpersonal jockeying for, I guess, ultimate power. Ultimate world power. Pinky and the Brain. They're Pinky and the Brain. You can decide who's which. They want to take over the world. So they're doing this whole thing, and the Dark Army sweeps in and puts a bullet in Angela's brain, and she's gone. And my immediate question, I could have bought that whole thing, but my immediate question was, where in the process did she become so susceptible, and what exactly did White Rose peddle?
What was the compelling evidence?
Correct. To me, I needed that answer. I didn't care if the machine was just a nuclear-powered, destroy the world, burn it all down so I can go find my lover in some ethereal plane, I don't know what.
Well, that's because if you got the answer for the proof, that would have answered the other question. You would have been like, okay, she's crazy.
Nuts. Right.
Yeah.
And Angela, so let's talk about Angela, because, again, she has a very integral part to this story. It's not a random death. It's a very purposeful, pointed death. It's a very impactful death. But I still am at the point of that character went around on a carousel, and I feel like made no forward momentum whatsoever. So why did I spend all that time with her? Other than to be an object of affection for Elliot.
Well, and for the mechanic of making Price turn on completely, I would say completely turn on White Rose.
That's true. And I do say that later,
And
that
the Deus
Price
group.
was the better motivation. Angela was a better motivation for
For
Price
Price
and
and
White
Elliot.
Rose than for Elliot, yes. And Darlene, I guess.
Which makes you believe, why did they make her such an integral part of the last episode? She was she was Elliot's fiance.
Well, I bought that. That gets into the series finale discussion, though. Because we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that
We're
one.
jumping ahead.
Because that's going to come back to a point you've already raised, Kylie, too. So, yeah, let's save it all for that,
Okay.
that piece.
Fair enough.
So, can we introduce my favorite character in the whole season 4?
Yes!
Yes!
But sure to take your hands off your mouth.
Sorry, coronavirus. Good thing I just washed my hands.
Yeah, no.
Janice.
That's your favorite
Oh
character?
my god, I love Janice to death.
What do you love about her?
Yeah.
It was the quirky, it was the way she was so into cause and effect. And when something didn't reconcile itself with her worldview, she had this weird tilt your head sideways like a dog kind of thing. Interesting. I have more data for my research kind of thing. She was very meticulous about the way she thought about things.
You know what was interesting about that character in general was after all of these seasons, they decided to introduce this major character in season 4. In the final season, when she was not present anywhere in seasons 1 through 3, and she had such an impact, and like I was really invested in her role in the series and believed that she was with the whole plan the whole time. That's what I found fascinating about Janice, that I believed it, that I believed that she was part of it, even though, you know, she just, it's like, where the hell did she come from? Where has she been?
Behind the scenes.
But yeah.
For me,
So,
it feels
that was
like
really cool.
the stakes kept getting higher throughout this series. And you start to realize that when the reach of the Dark Army gets further, and to me that was really introduced with Janice, because when we first saw her, it wasn't as this Dark Army like fixer that we found out that she was to be. She was having
Set
dinner.
up by her mom.
Yeah, set up by her mom, and she
Dom's
seems like
mom.
Dom's mom.
Yeah.
Yes, Dom's mom. So she seems like such an unassuming character.
From church, I think, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a friend from church. And so when you realize who she actually is, the reveal of that is just so shocking, and you start to realize how deep this reach goes.
Well, and what I loved about she just was so forthcoming with what she was going to do. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Like at one point, I wrote down this quote. She says, "If you don't feel 100% like last time," talking to Dom about the FBI interrogation, "tell me now so I can set aside a time to kill your mom and your entire family. Just like, I got to pencil this into my book."
Yes.
Like it's almost like she is Irving if he would have chosen to go more of a corporate man instead of going to write his novel.
Yeah,
Because they're both at the sociopath aspect to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for that reason, I would say fascinating, yes, but favorite goes far from me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
because I do not think I can honestly say I love Janice. I agree. She fulfilled her purpose very effectively because she was introduced in the one manner and then turned out to be something totally different. And also, she's a taxidermist. No offense, taxidermists who are listening. I do wonder how you get into that position. So, that's, I think, where her meticulous side comes in. They made a very deliberate point of on-screen showing you her engaged in her taxidermist activities, so you know that is how she is. Every detail must be perfectly observed.
Well, and they told about her background, how her parents got her tested when she was
I was just thinking
kid.
that. I was just thinking that.
She liked dead animals. You're right, fascinating is the right word for her character. I was really looking forward to every time she was on screen.
Yep.
Because I wanted to study her. I wanted to know what made her tick.
Yeah.
She's like Hannibal Lecter without the eating people thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, mental
Yes.
illness and this whole spectrum across the board with MrRobot here.
Well, but part of what she talks about when she talks about her childhood is that she was sent to every doctor and psychiatrist under the sun who all deemed her perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that, again, I think goes back to we all have the capacity to do harm or be harmed. And she's just chosen that fork in the road, which makes her even a bit more interesting to me. Because it's not some inborn predilection. It's, I could go this way or that way. I'm, an average person making what she perceives to be average choices. Like her own perspective on herself is so interesting.
Well, and she doesn't labor under the delusion that she's doing great things either. She thinks it is more of just fulfilling a role. Like this is her
It's a
job.
task. Right, it's a task. Almost like she has a checklist,
And she's okay with filling that role and doing average things in her mind. She's perfectly fine with living her average life, averagely killing people.
But then that also makes me wonder who along the line recruited her into the Dark Army and what about the Dark Army appealed to that side of her. Because they're kind of chaos, except for the timekeeping aspect. Now maybe she met White Rose somewhere along the way and it was the timekeeping piece that attracted her along into the mission, if you will. But that's what I wondered a little bit with Janice, because Irving provides a motivation at the end. Clearly they had an intimate relationship or of some sort. We don't know exactly, but he definitely infers it. And then come along to Janice, and you wonder, how the hell did she get wrapped up into
I have a
it?
little theory about that. I think she got involved in it because the Dark Army, why they introduce chaos, they do it in a very meticulous way over the course of decades. They've planned this whole thing out. There's not a scenario that they have not planned for it for the most part, and I think that's what she likes about it. The planning, the meticulousness, the attention to detail in the planning.
So somebody sold her on the big map.
Somebody's sold her on the systems behind the plan, I think.
I could buy that theory. Good theory! Everybody got quiet. They agree. Okay! So you mentioned Wang Shu. I'm sorry, it was Wang Shu, not Wu Shen. I misspoke. The new assistant, White Rose's new assistant. What did you think of her? The one who basically said things directly.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's a real missed opportunity with Wang Shu here. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the episode about being really interested in women doing evil stuff. Because I think she has so much potential and she pushes back so hard on White Rose. And so when she just sort of walks off in disgust, and that's all we get from her, I feel cheated by the Wang Shu character.
I see, and I feel like she's a new assistant. They brought her on. She's not as brainwashed as everybody, so she's reacting more like a normal, non-brainwashed person would react in those situations. Like, she's telling her, like, no, you're crazy. This is not going to work out the way you want. We need to do this. That's why she leaves, is because she realizes it's toxic.
Yeah, I was wondering too, is this the first assistant that White Rose would have had that she wasn't sleeping with?
That's a good
Or maybe
question.
she was.
Maybe it is a guy in drag.
We don't really know their relationship, right? We just know that she's the new assistant.
I do not get the sense that they're sleeping together.
I don't
No,
know.
I didn't either.
But I do get the sense that she comes in with a different point of view. I do believe I get the sense that she has that loyalty there and that belief in the plan. But I also think she brings some reality to White Rose, and the things she said, I was like, she's not wrong. I don't want them to go and hurt Elliot or anything like that. But I think she brought up some good points that were really dismissed, and it was like, but I also think like her departure, I could have gotten more too. I felt like there should have been more there too, but we had to move on. There was a whole lot more story to tell, so.
I kind of liked her, like, I don't know, peace out, I'm out of here, guys. This is too much.
Yeah.
I
thought it was
actually
more real.
appreciated that a little bit too. I mean, I agree, Aaron. I think it would have been interesting to know more about her. And I wanted to know why White Rose had this change of heart all of a sudden, where she wanted an assistant who would tell her like it is, whether she agreed with it or not. But the fact that she walked off felt satisfying to me in the moment, because that really was when everything was going to hell, and, you know, she's smart. She jumped the ship before she went down with it. I appreciated that in the moment, I guess. I thought she was smart.
Like, and it's also, you bring up a good point, Kylie, and I certainly don't disagree with that at all. Particularly with respect to how perhaps drawn out or dramatic some other characters have been in terms of, like, their exit from the storyline or how they ended it. I guess it was kind of nice to just, she always told it like it was, and this is, I'm done, I'm out of here. And then we got to move on. You know, it didn't belabor it, I guess.
Yeah, as I'm sitting here listening to the discussion, I realized, like, I didn't consider that character much at all. And maybe it's because we didn't have, like, the investment that we had in some other characters that had such a sort of a brief exit. So I think it's interesting, and now I'm thinking back.
What I thought was the most interesting was that fact that it was her interactions with White Rose, where you found out that White Rose was literally denying the truth that was being spoken to her.
Yeah.
Was fed into her delusions about her machine. What about the flashback episode with White Rose's fiance or lover or whoever?
Lover.
I really enjoyed that.
Oh, I loved it.
I love that one. His name is Chen, by the way.
Chen.
Thank you.
I was like, what was his name? It was a while ago.
Because I really wanted to get to the bottom of her motivations for her grand design with the Deus group and her machine and everything. Pretty good motivation, honestly.
I'm glad that there was an episode to explain the origin story of White Rose. I thought it was beautifully told, and I felt
Beautifully
it was
shot.
very beautifully shot, and very necessary for us to understand, but also to be more invested in White Rose's arc too. It was really important. I don't know how I would feel about the series without that, actually thinking about it, you know. But
that's a really good point that you raised, because I think White Rose is introduced to us as a villain character, and so for us to have that emotional investment you describe in the resolution of their story, we need to know what fuels this. And it's interesting that it's something so relatable and decent and human, right? It really does a lot for that character. I think your point's really good.
One thing, I'm looking back over some of my notes, and I had written down at this point, White Rose and her assistant, daughter, ? Sister, ? Lover, ? So I guess at one point it did cross my mind that that assistant could have been any one of those three individuals, I guess.
Actually, I agree. I had a similar thought, not all three relationships, but at one point I remember thinking, is she his sister? And I think the parallel I was drawing was because she was so direct, I was thinking of Darlene being so direct to Elliot. And like, were they setting that pair up to be like the mirror version of Elliot and Darlene? Because in many ways, Elliot and White Rose are mirror characters.
Well, another thought I had during that that episode was that, is she one of White Rose's personalities? Because she already has White Rose and the minister kind of identities. So I thought, because I don't recall the assistant interacting with anybody else really.
I think she did.
But she was there when he got in the finale. We shouldn't talk about this. But when she quit, Price saw her quit.
Yeah.
And he commented on it.
Yeah.
It's a bit different where it's not so much alters, but it's the way that White Rose and Ji Zhang are forced socially to present differently at different times.
Agreed.
But I agree, it does absolutely build on that metaphor that you're describing, Kylie, of the mirror characters. Because they do have these different faces to the world.
I want to know how she knew Wang Shu, but such is life. Maybe that will be in the expanded universe graphic novel that they should write for the show.
Tell me about it. It was the first thing I said when I watched it. It was the first thing I commented, where's the graphic novel? Right. They need the graphic novel on this.
Let's all go edit the wiki page.
We need to. I said, thank you for saying that, because nobody else understood. I said it in my MrRobot group, Facebook group, and I was like, why aren't more people agreeing with me on this? But I knew you would. I'm so glad.
What did everybody think about the silent episode?
Oh,
The silent.
Brilliant.
They don't talk at all.
Brilliant.
There's no spoken dialogue in the whole episode, except for at the end, I think it was, maybe?
Yeah, where he says, we need to talk.
Beginning and the end.
The beginning
yeah,
and the
said,
end.
we need to talk.
She said, we don't have to talk about this. Darlene starts by saying, we don't have to talk about this to Elliot. And then Vera
when they're
says,
doing the hack at the virtual reality.
Yes, yeah.
I
that was intense.
I was so anxious the whole time.
Oof, it was so good. And you don't even realize there's nothing spoken until you're like, that's right, there was no dialogue. Because you hear music and you hear singing and you hear other things. You see text. So your mind, my mind anyway, kind of inserted that. And I looked back, it was like, nope, It was
I
you
didn't
talking.
even realize.
I didn't realize it either, and now
Yep.
that you say it, I'm blown away.
Well,
Now I gotta go.
I normally do not like episodes where they have that one-off episode where it's got that weird dynamic or that weird mechanic, I should say. I don't normally like those. I really like this one because it lets you kind of fill in the blank, like Amy said, but what you actually think is going on or being spoken or conveyed in different ways. And I think this episode was a lot more visual than a lot of them could be. In particular, there was one scene where Elliot's running and he trips over a stroller, and I literally jumped out of my seat thinking he had knocked over a baby in a stroller. And it was cans from a homeless woman, but still. So I just like that visual aspect of this.
There was so much running in this season.
That episode was so loud without ever
being
spoken.
quiet.
I mean, I remember just being on the edge of my seat for that episode, and that's blowing my mind right now. I did not realize that.
I didn't realize it either that there wasn't a word. That, to me, that's utter brilliance, that you have to tell me that that's what happened.
Yeah.
Because I did not notice.
I got halfway through, I'm like, God, this is such a quiet episode. Why are they not talking? They're not talking! In my notes I put almost no dialogue, then I crossed out almost.
Wow.
That's cool.
I love Revelations. Now I have to rewatch it. I'm going to rewatch season 4, not going to lie.
You should. and you should, and now that... Imagine watching season 4 as intense as it was when it was on TV and you had to wait an entire week between episodes. It was awful.
I would not.
It was awful. We were
That's actually
chomping at
it.
the
We'll
bit.
take a little aside before we go to the next season 4 question. For those of you that were watching, I know that some of you kind of jumped onto it later. Did you jump onto it in the break between season 3 and season 4, or did you actually watch season 3 live and then wait the 2 years and then watch season 4 live?
I picked it up in the break between 3 and 4.
Okay, so you didn't feel true agony, but you felt some agony.
And I only said season 4. That's how I felt during season 4. So I guess some agony, I guess? I didn't have to wait the 2 years. No, I didn't feel the agony between that.
Oh, we waited 2 years.
See, yeah.
Did you have agony?
There was a lot of, we talked a lot about the show, but we tried to fill our time with things related to the show.
Sure.
Because, we also had a podcast about the show, so we were like, are we on hiatus now? What are we doing? I didn't really feel a ton of agony, but I think Devlin and Aaron had a different take on it.
I think I did, at least, because I had started watching, I guess, shortly before season 3 would have started. And so there was quite a lot of anticipation for me getting into season 4, especially because it was announced at the beginning that it was going to be the final one. But I admit, and maybe it shows my age a bit, but I kind of like the anticipation of a weekly show, especially
exciting.
one with plot twists happening all the time and these big story arcs, and because I knew things were coming to a close, like Sunday night at 10 o'clock. That was like sacred time. Like, you couldn't have persuaded me to do anything else. Sundays at 10 o'clock for 13 weeks. And we don't have that experience anymore.
I totally agree with you, though. I mean, I say that, imagine doing... But it was exciting, because every week it was what's going to happen now? And then the episodes that didn't have commercials, because the ones that are, over, 50 minutes, they aired them without commercial. Or, the finales and the premiere and stuff, and maybe an episode in between, which first of all, I can't believe they got away with. I think they did in season 3, too, and those who watched it live can maybe speak to that. But I'm with you. It was fun. Because we don't often get the experience of that anticipating and that, wondering and letting it spin around in your mind for a week and talk about it and then get to that episode. Binging has its place in time, but so does,
appointment television.
Yeah. And I'm with you. It was nobody bother me. I even put my phone down. Silent, I don't want to be distracted, nothing. People knew. 10 o'clock on Sunday, you don't bother me.
Yeah, I'm making popcorn and dumping M&Ms into it.
Yes, exactly. That's so funny because when the premiere was happening, a bunch of my MrRobot friends were like, we've got our popcorn, we've got our M&Ms, we've got our,
So let's talk about episode 7. I believe it's episode 7. Yes, it is. Yes. So this is proxy authentication required. This is the play in 5 acts. Mm-hmm. Where we get the major reveal, which Jeremy correctly predicted as being one of the haven't watched the whole thing people in the last episode. That Vera shows up. He's been dogging Krista for a little while because his henge person, takes a picture, notes that there's some sort of personal dynamic, doesn't know what it is, kidnaps her in her own house or apartment, and then eventually baits Elliot into coming, and then he has this grand proposal of how they're going to be kings of New York together and control that New York world. And it's literally told in a Shakespearean cadence over 5 acts, including the different end of act beats that you would normally see in a tragedy. This episode has a culmination of the reveal where we find out why Elliot has the dissociative personality disorder, which is that MrRobot's former identity, Edward Alderson, sexually abused him. What did you think of that episode? I gotta say, I will start this one. As difficult, and you all had hinted at it, as difficult as it was to watch, and it was, this might be one of my favorite episodes of the series. I was so blown, the secret itself, because you had predicted it, I was kind of along for the ride and thinking, oh, that's probably what it was going to be. And that was true. That's what it was going to be. I just couldn't, I was just so caught by how effectively that story was told and how, I think Sam directed this one, how close quarters all of the shots were, so that all of the dialogue was literally straight in the camera lens up to their faces with just a little bit of distance if it was in the therapy session. And even though I knew or had some suspicion of the outcome, it still amazed me when it came out. And if Rami didn't get an Emmy for this, that's just highway robbery.
You didn't.
Highway robbery!
That's highway robbery. Yeah.
Stupid Emmys and they're okay, continue. What did you think?
I heard some speculation that it may be that the last half of the season was too late to be submitted for awards this year. So I am keeping my fingers crossed that there might be awards for him, and also for, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the actor's name right now who plays Vera.
Elliot Villar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so for someone who is completely unexcited to see him return to the show, I thought, wow, was this ever a powerful performance? And did they ever, they used him in such a perfect way.
Yes.
I think, because I was trying to think, who else could really elicit this sort of, who could create the circumstances for this conversation? And he really just takes it to a different place. And so, I don't know what people thought of his performance in it.
Amazing.
I thought brilliant. This was, and I'm with Kylie, this is one of my absolute favorite episodes. And it was so powerful and so emotionally charged, and so there was nothing about this, just from start to finish, with the device of the storytelling and the beautiful direction both by Sam and by visually as well, and obviously the acting was excellent. And I think that for me that also sold me on not just the Vera character but that actor in particular, where it was like, wow, we see more dimension in his acting and this character himself, and I thought it was well done. I could go on and on about how well done I thought that episode was.
One thing you just said, Aaron, a second ago, is that you liked that character because you thought who's going to be the character that can facilitate this conversation or the circumstances for him. And I kept thinking at the time, he's so deep rooted in his psychosis, the only way he's going to confront what really happened is if somebody holds him at gunpoint. And that's what happened. He was forced to deal with everything.
Yeah.
This episode I thought This episode made me question everything I'd seen so far, because I was toying with the idea, maybe this person's a personality, maybe they're all personalities in this room right now, and this is all just going on in his head in a hospital bed somewhere. Literally my head was spinning throughout the whole episode because I didn't know what was going on and what was real.
That's a good point. So I'm going to be revealing, we've already done a Buffyverse series, and I did have a thought during this episode that we were going to wake up in an insane asylum, like Buffy does at the end of that season 5 episode, where all of the slaying and everything is it in her head or isn't it?
It reminded me of Sucker Punch. If you've never seen it, it takes place in an insane asylum, and they're being abused and they're trying to get out. And this alternate reality thing. It's a controversial movie because not a lot of people liked it, but if you did, it was really good. But same thematic elements.
I've always been so interested by the Vera character because it would be so easy to just write him as a stupid drug dealer and kind of write it off at that point, but he's always just had that philosophical extra something. There was something that was driving him. It was almost like that Tyrell thing of like it's beyond what's real and what's in front of us. He wanted to like escalate to something else. So
Delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, delusions of grandeur. And man, the way he plays that actor looks crazy when he's on that fake meth or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks crazy, but I love the way that this story was told in this episode. I like that it felt extra dramatic. We kind of got away from those shots that we're used to seeing of the character sort of in the corner and then all of the empty space. It was right up in their face, and I think that was really appropriate to Elliot's story, and I feel like it was like respectful to Elliot's story in a way, because that is such a heavy, heavy topic, and you feel all of the weight of it. And something that, you know, I feel like I've gone on this emotional journey with Elliot throughout watching this show, and he's constantly confused. Like, you can tell he's trying to work something out. You know there's more, and this is where it all comes to a head. And gosh, Rami Malek, I mean, the series alone, but this episode just freaking, he breaks me. He breaks me watching that. And I love the storytelling aspect of the acts and the drama of the lightning and the thunder outside, and it was just, everything came together really well in this episode.
It was like a movie.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this the episode where it was also taking place in Dom's house?
No, it was Krista's house. This one was Krista's.
No, wasn't there...
No, this episode was self-contained, and it only listed a few of the actors in the opening credits.
Okay.
It was Rami, Christian, Elliot, and then Gloria Rubin had the guest star, and that was the whole opening credits. So I knew, and it didn't ever leave that apartment, except for outside when the two were, well, he told us to be out here, well, maybe we should go
Peanut
out.
and Yavi.
Yeah.
They were great. I'm sorry.
Yes, they were.
I loved at the end where he's like, get his wallet.
Peanut is also... Oh, sorry, Dave.
Oh yeah, I'll let you finish that though, because this is a good one.
Peanut goes by Young M.A. They're also a recording artist and a lot of fun. So just for any listeners who hadn't maybe heard them, you can do like a Joey Badass Young M.A. playlist.
Fair enough.
I need a MrRobot playlist. I think I'm going to put one together.
Definitely.
That's something that I've definitely been inspired to do watching the show, because it's included so much of my favorite music, and then the music has so much storytelling in itself. So.
And I thought about you when I was watching it, because I was like, I'm putting it on closed caption.
I was going to ask the
And
same question.
I totally did, and I was like, yes, the lyrics are so perfect. 'Cause the music's perfect, but it's so, and sometimes it's so ambient and
yes.
That you're like, you don't catch the lyrics until like the closed captioning is like, this is what the lyrics are saying. It was so much fun watching it with closed captioning on for this last season.
Oh, I'm glad you did that. Oh, that's awesome.
Dave, did you want to say
Yeah, sorry, Dave. I jumped in on you.
No, it's okay. I just want to say it was great to have like a payoff to Vera's character. Like he's not just this absolutely like nothing but evil, everything goes wrong around him character like he's kind of portrayed in the first season. That when he comes back at the end of the third season, it's not like, oh, what's he gonna do? He's actually used to move the plot forward in a very, very good way, as to I think what Aaron was saying. But it's just nice to see that payoff of that character, like, oh, he was actually used for something, not just like, oh, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think he would not have even remotely registered as a character I even gave two you-know-whats about, but he was rounded off so well and gave such a wonderful performance, and for such a great purpose, really, that he's one of my favorite characters of the show. He just is. And even though he's, drug-dealing delusions of grandeur man, who killed Shayla?
Yeah.
Not nice.
So during the course of this episode, we find out everything that happened to Elliot. We also find out that Darlene was hiding in the closet the whole time. So I kind of wondered...
On the day that Elliot jumped. So we find out that Elliot jumped out. That's one of the questions. So one of the questions I had last time was, were we given enough motivation for being pushed? He wasn't pushed. He jumped to escape. Basically, Dad coming in the room. I don't think she hid in the closet every time, but they just happened to be upstairs after making the snowman, the Home Alone snowman.
Kevin
McAllister, that's his name. After the snowman, to get a camera to take a picture of the snowman, her Dad coming, made her go into the closet, and then, as I understand the story, Dad comes into the room, Elliot gets a ball bat or something, starts swinging it wildly, and then jumps out the window just to get away from him. And then we don't hear until the series finale that Darlene knows that something was going on, but I don't think she was there every time. I think she was there for the last part. And that's also the point at which their family blew apart, in a sense. I think that's what, unless you disagree, I think that's what the show was hinting at, was this kind of shed the light on this situation.
They focus on that window incident so much throughout the entire series.
Yeah, I think and I also think by the sequence of events we see in season 4, it's after that moment that we start to see the splintering of personalities.
Didn't they suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I misinterpreted this, wasn't there a suggestion that there could have been that splintering slightly before or in
There
that
was.
moment, because they said like it could have been MrRobot that actually was the one who took the bat and threw himself out the window. Okay, so I didn't just make that up.
No,
Okay.
you didn't make it
Okay.
up.
Well, and I think that's
But
why
it all was tied up into the same incident, so it's
Exactly,
like, where does that really start?
they say that's why Elliot didn't remember the incident with the window, is because MrRobot was the one in control.
But that could have been later, because he goes to the movie theater by himself with MrRobot jacket on and starts talking to the empty seat beside him. Who is he talking to at that point? I always thought it was MrRobot.
Well, I always thought it was MrRobot as well, but I don't think that's when he's first introduced, because later in in season 4, you have the flashback in the museum, and he's hiding the key, and he says, the young Elliot is talking to an imaginary person.
His friends, us.
Yeah. Well, no, he was talking to MrRobot because he wasn't.
Or was he talking to the child one?
I don't know. Child one came later.
Okay.
It came later because the Krista character, and we're not on that episode, so I don't really want to get into it. But it is explained when that person. It did explain the personalities and when they manifested.
I heard the explanation of what they were. I just didn't know about the wind.
she does explain when too.
Okay. Boy, we went around in many circles and spiralies there.
Yeah.
This was all from the... So, what is the question? I don't know. How are you guys feeling there, Mr. Rewatch folks?
Well, so we got as far as 3-7, so there's just a few episodes left. If I'm
Yes.
thinking about it kind of chronologically. I'm just looking back at your notes, Kylie.
Yes. Here's the next question. So we start to get seeds. I mean, there is an earlier scene where the MrRobot persona meets the mother character or the persecutor and the child in the boardroom, and they make reference to an other, quote unquote. So I was like, ha! I knew there was more than one personality.
I came up with a name for this.
You did?
I did. This is the Council of Elliot. That's my name.
I love it. Yeah.
TM Jeremy. Okay.
Yes.
At some point, it's very clear that the mother and the child are trying to convince MrRobot to tell the Elliot that we see about the quote-unquote other. And at some point, MrRobot talks about thinking that Darlene will be able to awaken him. I just want to clarify for my own edification. Is it your understanding that everything we're watching is contemporaneously happening in his mind to this stuff that's outside of his mind? Because when he said that awaken thing, and then the later moment that we see in the end, the very last moment of the series, there's an awakening and Darlene is the trigger. And so I'm wondering when this scene of the Council of Elliot is actually taking place.
Yes, it's taking the tip.
I'll trend it. We'll trend it on Twitter. # Council of Elliot.
I don't know, because I feel like they suggested earlier at some point earlier in season 4 about this other, and about that, when Darlene told Elliot about Vera and he brushed it off and they said there is this other. So I feel like there are moments where we see, or there's supposed to be some real Elliot. As far as your question as to when in the timeline that's happened, I think it's happening I perceived it as happening in the moment. Like I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it's happening simultaneously to what's happening in the real world.
So my question about that scene was, that other they're talking about, do we think they were actually talking about Elliot, or the Elliot we've known since episode 1?
I think they were talking about telling the Elliot that we've been following, which is actually the personality, about the real Elliot.
Yes, yes, that is exactly it.
Carry the denominator after 1. Oh, Aaron's doing the same thing I'm doing over here.
Exactly, we need a diagram.
Yeah.
Where's the Always Sunny meme?
She has it though.
The way that I interpreted that specific moment was almost like MrRobot, as we've come to know him, has been having these conversations with the other personalities, and now we're included in it. So
Because we are one of the personalities.
Because now we're in the council.
Right.
The council of
Well,
Elliot.
technically we always were.
We always were. I didn't get my Outlook invite to the board meeting.
Right.
But
I think
someone needs to talk to management.
It's possible that they have had these conversations with him, because now going back and knowing about these personalities and rewatching from season 1, it's like, they literally have been there the whole time. That's what Sam Esmail said. He said, when you find things out, you'll see that it's been that way the whole time. And there are a couple of points throughout the series where all 3 of them, or 1 or 2 of them, but all of them will speak directly to the Elliot that we know, or somehow be present in whatever he's going through.
The vacation episode.
That's one of them, yeah. They talk to him when on the big screen in New York, in Times Square. They're there when he's having his other mental delusions that are in season 1 and return in season 4. So I feel like maybe this is a conversation, because the Elliot that we know didn't take over Elliot his entire life. It was only like a year or so.
Because that's what's happening when he puts on that mask, right?
That's what I think.
That's the trigger moment for the mastermind.
Yeah, when he puts on the jacket first.
Okay.
And then that's how I interpreted that.
Does anybody have a differing interpretation, since this is so open? Everybody agrees with that's when the mastermind was born, and we basically join the show. We join the show when Elliot's consciously kind of that mastermind is taking over the consciousness of the body.
there is a point, and I don't want to get into this too much because it relates to the series finale.
Okay, we're getting there.
There is a point where it is said when the mastermind came to be.
There is?
There is.
Was it with Darlene?
It was with Angela.
Angela?
It was with Angela.
In the series finale?
Yes.
Okay,
I just say-
we
But
really have to
did I know?
We'll get to that.
Okay, well,
yes, we'll get to that.
Aaron's nodding too. Okay, fine.
I feel like, did I miss something? But when I hear it, I might be like, oh yeah.
Last night I had to go back and rewatch something that had happened in season 1 to confirm. And I was like,
Are you talking about in the arcade?
yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I was just referring to when things from season 1 were repeated in season 4. But I don't think that's when it happened.
She says something in season 1.
Yeah, but we're talking about when we see Mastermind.
Okay, let's just go to the series finale. Did we cover everything up in season 4 until then, before we meditate on this?
One thing, the scene with Janice in Dom's house where she stabs Janice, I loved that episode.
Where Janice stabs Dom?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Dom
pulls her. I was messaging with Amy at this point. Yes. And I sent her screenshots of my journal that I write this stuff in. And literally I have Dom's power move with Irish bastard Deegan. Go Dom.
Yes. That was a reminder that Dom is actually a badass, because I feel like we forgot that for a little while.
So,
completely agree, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was so random because you meet that Deegan character earlier. I guess I missed where she kind of did a deal or made a little thing where he would come back and be this kind of protector for her family. But man, that was some badass. Yes, badass is the word.
Yeah. Well, and the only suggestion that I got, and this was my second watch through, was that like she saw that he was being discharged or what. They showed the paperwork. They showed his name.
But it was so random.
It was
when
so
he was
random.
there.
So when he comes back, you're like, oh my god. So it was really subtle. It was really behind the scenes. We were so bombarded with other things that we even forget about him for a minute.
And I also thought he was delightful.
Yeah,
For a moment. Maybe it was the Irish accent, but I just thought it was delightful.
I just liked a lot of the turns of phrases in this whole series, especially like Janice uses a term that I thought was just very Janice. She says pluck a lot.
Oh,
if you go back and look for it, she's
pluck.
like, you've got pluck.
Yes.
She does.
I like it.
Those little things, those attentions to details, just like the Janice character would want, just really tickled me a little bit in this show.
But yes, loved that episode. I what redemption really for the moment, and was very scared they were killing her off
Yeah.
for a moment. And the fact that I didn't buy that Darlene and Dom really cared about each other beyond the one night of passion or flirtation or using, depending upon what you look at it, until that moment. And then I was like, okay.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
That was the moment that I realized, oh, okay, there's more here.
Yeah, they really do care about each other. At the minimum care, if not more, Anything else you want to mention before we meditate on this trippy series finale?
No, because I feel like this is going to take a little discussion because there's a lot.
Would you agree, Mr. Rewatch, folks? How much time did you spend on the series finale in your podcast?
So I think
An hour?
we did two episodes, right? So because the finale is a two-parter, so I guess there's 2 1-hour episodes.
So 2
But
hours.
Dave has to edit it, so he knows better than me.
Yeah, all of our episodes run about 40 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Like, I don't talk on the show a lot. It's mostly just Aaron and Devlin just going over the plot points, picking out different theories, putting things together. Dev's in security operations, so he talks about the actual realistic parts of the show.
Oh.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time on the finale too as well, because it was like, oh, this is our last episode.
Oh.
This is our last
Subscribe to
episode,
Mr.
too.
Rewatch and listen to their whole podcast.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we recorded the last one on Christmas Day. So
Oh,
Merry
it's a very
Christmas.
special episode. There's so much.
That's a
this
partridge
season-
in a pear tree.
This season's almost overwhelming, I think, because there were so many sort of experimental episodes and they were trying to wrap up so many different storylines. And it was interesting to me that the finale really kind of takes you out of all of that noise. I mean, and I don't mean to be negative when I say that, but everything but resolving that one central question, what's going on with Elliot. And in a kind of bizarro, I likened it a little bit to like when Edward Scissorhands finds himself in the happy suburb.
Sure.
Like when he gets to this, when he is in kind of the alternate universe, being exposed to this alternate life with a happy family and white cars everywhere.
Yes, what is
Very
with the
bizarre.
white cars? I noticed that immediately, and I,
I
was
did not
like,
notice that
I
until I
did.
read your synopsis.
every car is white except the SUV that he drives.
I never noticed that. Oh, God. That's crazy. I never noticed that.
And I'm like, clearly this world is different. I don't know if it's real or not. Why are all the cars white? And there's a lot of color dichotomy. You see it in the Not Quite Wedding. You've got the bridesmaids in the one color and the groomsmen in the other black tuxedo, whatever. But the white cars, like, why and this is a haunting detail for me. Like, what about this ideal world made white cars very important? And I couldn't figure it out other than I know that what I'm sort of likening it to is the whole series seems to be a chess match between White Rose and Elliot. Who's playing black, who's playing white? I don't know. But it seems like visually that, and I don't know if that's even really what it is. That's just what I took away from
You
it.
mentioned chess in the prison in season 2.
They do.
Yeah.
And he plays it with Ray. And so I wondered if maybe that was just kind of a visual thing that wasn't visual foreshadow or indicator of the overall theme of the show.
Wow, I never thought of that, actually, because you're right with respect to chess and, those two characters going at it, and one visually being all black and one being either all white or white in her name, and then these cars, and then except for the one black car. But that, I think you're onto something there that I never even thought of, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was a layer that was really, really intentional. I don't see how it couldn't be.
For the one black character talking about Terrell's SUV that Elliot drives in the...
In the fantasy
Yeah.
personality shell world, all the cars are white. Go back and rewatch.
I didn't either until I read it in the
Well, no, I
notes,
mean,
but-
I just watched it very recently, so now I remember very clearly.
Well, I think they did a lot of intentional things with the color of the whole season. Just because you notice that the
lighting.
mother's character is always in, or the doctor character is always in white personality at the end.
Oh, she is, and
There's the Angela wedding dress white. There's,
Yeah.
there's lots of different things.
well, they do a lot with lighting.
Symbolism.
Dark versus light. I mean, looking at that, the series finale, looking at one of the things that we commented on, we being like the folks that I spoke to who are not you
The
wonderful
lighting.
folks, was the lighting and how warm it felt and how like cheery it was, and his apartment was so warm and colorful and cheery in a way that was like, this is weird. This is really different. And so I think lighting plays along with that because that's part of color and mood and ambiance.
So
Dave, can you explain?
Go ahead.
Dave, can you explain white hat and black hat hackers?
Yeah, sure. So a black hat hacker is somebody that has like kind of malicious intent as to what they're doing. They would hack into a system to say steal money or exploit somebody, something like that. Whereas a white hat hacker is somebody who hacks for vigilance, I would say. So essentially people who like try to hack companies and say, hey, I hacked you guys, this was the problem I found. And so that's kind of the difference between the white hat and black hat. It comes from old spaghetti westerns, where the bad guy always wore a black cowboy hat.
Like
the good guy
spy
always wore a
versus
white
spy.
hat. Yeah, spy versus spy. Well, kind of. They're both bad people. Yeah, so that's actually what Devlin does. He deals with people. He deals with white hat hackers a lot.
So would a hacker that hacks companies to make sure they're not doing anything malicious be considered a white hat hacker or a black hat hacker?
They're like a gray hat.
I was thinking like
hats.
in my head, I guess I was thinking white hacker would be like checks and balances, making sure they're in place. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what they're doing. They're doing it for the good, right? They're trying to help people. They're not trying to exploit people or harm people.
It's a
Whereas
more
black hat hackers are
gray
they're
area.
more malicious.
So then the vigilante kind of hacktivist is a gray?
That's in my head, yeah.
Yeah, because, well, in relationship to MrRobot, like, F Society would be gray hats because they want to do this good for overall society, but they're doing it kind of nefariously.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
But still pulling out the black and the white.
The color, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that I do think visual deliberate there.
Well, and-
but it's like...
Oh, sorry.
No, I don't have a finish on that thought. Go ahead.
I was going to say it wouldn't. Going back to Sam Esmail, it wouldn't it wouldn't surprise me because he does hack. He has hacked. He has been a hacker. He modeled Elliot after himself. So minus the mental
The dissociative personality disorder,
the mental illness. But he says like this is. I was very much like Elliot. And I was very into computers. I used to be a hacker. So for him to pull these references, even visually, it probably was very, very intentional. And I just learned today about the white and hat and the black hat hackers. I think that's really fascinating.
It's multi-layered. It's an onion, this one.
It's an onion.
So let's talk about Angela now. We saved it. Julianne, we're going to start with you. This was your point, and then Aaron said, yes, we should wait.
Yeah, so the episode, this is where it clicked for me. So, Elliot's chasing Angela, chases her to the arcade, which is a scene that we've seen before. And I know it because I mentioned it on this podcast last time. It's that song, Queen by Perfume Genius, which is one of my favorite songs.
That's what caught you.
That's so and he walks in and he's in the tux, and we've seen this before. I didn't realize it until that song started playing. So, song started playing, they have their interaction, and she basically, kind of explains to him what's going on in a way. And so I'm like, we've seen this, where did we see it? So after I finished the finale, I went back to season 1. And then I went into the episode where Elliot is withdrawing. And it was mentioned in the season finale by MrRobot? Gosh, Angela? I can't remember who mentioned it, but you've dipped into this world before.
MrRobot
says that to him. You've dipped into this world before.
Yeah, at Coney Island he says that, doesn't he? Or he said, was it the moment where he says, I tried to bring you back here?
I think so. Yeah, I think
the wedding.
Yep, it was that moment. Mm-hmm. Yes, because he's talking to MrRobot. He's saying you've dipped into this world before, and I'm like, where have we dipped into it? And then it's that scene that follows with Angela. It's in the first season when Elliot is going through withdrawal and he's having those hallucinations. He's having that vision in the office where they're eating the fish and it's weird and uncomfortable. Well, that scene ends this scene begins with Elliot and Angela in the arcade. And in that season, or in that first season, in that episode, Angela tells him, "You are not Elliot. You are the..." And then it cuts out.
You know what is interesting about that? No, and you're absolutely... The way I interpreted that, my mind just overwhelmed. But you're absolutely right. He does say that. And it is because it's like a loop. He remembers it again, maybe. Because I took it as we saw a piece of that but I saw it as kind of like what we saw in season 1 was probably felt like a flashback, but it's not. You know what I mean? It didn't occur to me.
Fever dream.
It didn't occur to me that those were 2 separate moments. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I took it as, oh, we're finally seeing the rest of this moment, but it didn't occur to me that it's because he's been there before and he's there again. Not that it's. I don't know how to explain it.
No, I get what you're saying. That was why I had made that connection.
Okay.
Because again, that scene starts, that song starts. I'm like, okay, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
And then MrRobot had just said to him that you have dipped into this world before.
So
I was trying to think, like, have we seen it? Like, have we seen this? Yes, we have. But we just thought that Elliot was withdrawing and he was hallucinating or having visions. And then as soon as Angela says, you are not Elliot, you are and it cuts out, he wakes up and he says, I'm alone. And then that's when MrRobot comes back out again. It's before that, when they're going to Steel Mountain.
Yes, but what we were saying earlier, thank you for clarifying that, at least what I think was being said was when the creation of Mastermind was, right?
Oh, yes. So she also, in that episode in season 1, she says to him, you were born a month ago.
Yeah, she says that.
Yeah, she says you're born a month ago.
But was a month ago the time when Darlene came back?
Yes.
And he wore the jacket. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm
we're all talking about the same thing here.
Yeah.
Because that's what we were saying when that moment.
That's why I keep asking if things are happening in real time or not. Because even though I realized that this was kind of a regurgitation of something we had seen, I did not think of it as the filling in the blank of the earlier scene. Yeah, I thought of it more of as, I don't know if I had a thought about it at the time. I was still struggling with, for me, and because this goes back to what was Angela really? What was Angela in the end? And this series finale kind of, what it shows us is that she meant a lot to Elliot ultimately. And I don't know that I'm not making sense because I'm still I'm processing what you're telling me. And then I'm like trying to think, do I remember that scene the way you're describing it? And then I'm trying to think, but Angela was fictional. This is like this nurturing world this is a shell world created for the Mastermind persona to stuff the real Elliot in while he's out playing around in the real world, is what I understand it to be, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm just confused now.
What are you confused about? We're all confused, but what do you...
I don't even know if I can articulate it.
This is how I felt last night. Like, after finishing it, my fiance and I watched this show together, and I kept talking, and I was like, no, take me through it again. Take me through it one more time. Like, what was it that happened? But yes.
I need to understand.
But it was the Mastermind character that had dipped into the loop that he had created for the real Elliot before.
You know, right. And I just didn't make that connection that it wasn't a continuation, it was dipping back into it, and we just saw the rest of it.
Did not form that connection.
Me either. Yep.
Still meditating on, I guess, Angela coming back. So, because your reaction earlier when we were talking was, why was she back in the series finale? To me, that was very obvious. This ideal world would have Angela in it. That's the simplest answer to that question. And it didn't bother me that they brought back Portia Doubleday. They brought back every character we saw that was a main cast credit, and her purpose made complete and total sense. I'm still struggling with her as a character from earlier on in the series. By that time, that question seems to have been abandoned, except now Julianne is pointing out this connection. Does this make sense? Probably not. I don't know what I'm saying.
Welcome to MrRobot fandom.
Watch it 4 or 5 more times.
And you'll get it.
I think I just walked myself in a circle and I'm back at the point I started.
It's definitely one of those shows that I feel like the more you watch it, the more you're willing to entertain extreme fantasies of what could and couldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, there's moments in the season finale I'm like, okay, he just killed Happy Elliot. Is he killing his own happiness? What's going on?
Yeah. I mean, this is only my second time through, and even now I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. You know, like, and you do dive deep because you know it can go there.
Well, I was like, wait a minute, weren't they talking about feedback loops? Didn't he just create a system error?
Well, and then every time they touched, there was earthquakes, and I'm just like,
Yes, earthquakes!
I'm like, where are you going now that he's dead and there's no more natural disasters? And I was like, my brain hurts.
And then he kept... Yes.
Well, and then there was
Also,
Coney Island, all the symbolism.
There was no earthquake when he knocked him back and he was still alive after having hit his head. Maybe it's because he was dying and the earthquakes didn't need to come. I don't know. But the natural shakiness stopped after the final push that landed in the... And there was no earthquake when he suffocated him either.
It seemed to me that the earthquakes happened when there was contact between the two universes, and this could be very off base, but I had thought maybe the reason that there isn't one when he kills the real Elliot was that now there's no more tension between the two universes. There's no duplication. There's just one.
And those the two energies too. And when one's dying, you know, that diminishes. Maybe that's the way I saw it, was the death, his demise, his death was diminished that energy. So there was no.
I buy this. I think that's where I was. You just walked me around.
The only other thought I had about it was like they were decision-making moments that after he knocked him over and he hit his head, there was no other way it could branch off into a different outcome.
Yeah, maybe.
Very fringy, though.
Yes. It reminded me of Fringe yet again. I highly recommend that show. It gets a little weird, but I recommend it.
I concur in that as well.
Agreed, yeah.
One of the things about the season finale I kind of struggle with a little bit is Elliot is transported to this perfect quote-unquote world, but in what's supposed to be the perfect world for what seems like everyone else, including him, he's got to reface his abuser from 20 years ago, and they act like nothing has happened. I felt for Elliot in that moment.
Well, so, good point. The way I took that, because I had to process that for a minute too, like, oh, he's here. But I think it's because it's a wishful world. This is the father that he wished he had, the one that never hurt him. And he actually, I think that is brought out in the scene where he sits down with the mom character. And he says, did Dad ever hurt me? Did you ever hurt me? And she says to him, no, Elliot, we love you more than life itself. And I think that for me was enough explanation. It wasn't him facing the abuser. It was this magical world where none of this stuff ever happened. And that's why he could place his core personality into this world, because he'd be happy and none the wiser. Ignorance is bliss, after all.
That's why I feel like it's not entirely accurate to say that the Elliot that was stuck in this perfect world loop is the real Elliot. Because the real Elliot, we've technically never really met the real Elliot.
Speculate!
So...
Segue!
The real Elliot was not the CEO of Allsafe. The real Elliot, did not grow up with these loving parents. This was just this idealization that Elliot, the real Elliot that we have not actually spent time with, met. This was something that the Elliot that we followed in this story created for that idealistic Elliot.
Yeah, he said he says to Darlene, I gave him everything that he could have wanted, or whatever, however he says it. And you're right, we don't meet him, we never see him. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It might branch off to a different discussion. How did people feel about Darlene not being in this perfect little world? I have my own thoughts. I was just hoping that.
I bought the show's explanation that Darlene was... they said multiple times Darlene would be the one to awaken him. The manifestation of Krista, who was explaining to the mastermind Elliot that he was one of 5 different personalities, says to him, you kept pushing Darlene away, and Darlene is not here because she is your tie to the real world.
Yeah.
And I bought that. I accepted that at face value.
I agree with you completely, and I think I thought about Darlene a lot in the series finale, or the 2 episodes, particularly because Elliot talks about her to White Rose, about people who you push away, and they come back and they love you, even with your faults, even with it getting messy. And immediately I was like, that the only character I could think of that he's describing has to be his sister. And the fact that his sister is his tie, is his is his rock in a way. I just love Darlene.
She's probably my favorite character.
She is just her arc is just as beautiful, and it was, her absence was really powerful to me and really spoke volumes, and reinforced by what this, you know, alternate Krista said to him too.
Well, and if you notice, the when Darlene was absent is when he went further into his delusions and went into prison, well, not really prison.
Yeah.
And when she comes back is when he has right when he has escaped that prison, mental prison, I should say.
So what do we think the real Elliot is like? Because what we find out, what Krista explains, and I feel like I need to read this out, so spoiler. The Elliot we watch is a personality, and called the mastermind. MrRobot's the protector. The mom we've been seeing the whole time is not real mom. Mom is the punisher or perpetrator. I forget what the word is. Persecutor, that's the one.
There's a P word in there somewhere.
Some P word.
And the mastermind's his rage.
The mastermind's his rage. The persecutor is the one who is processing his guilt and punishes him for it. The child is the one who fought back in his youth. The voyeurs are us. Hello, friends.
So did anyone else, I got real big never-ending story, childlike empress vibes at this part where she's explaining everything, and it was like, they were with you in the swamp.
Yeah,
I was like,
I got that
where's
too.
the horse?
Yeah,
thank you.
I felt that too.
Yeah.
Yes. You just have to give me a name. Yes, I love that movie. I did not think of it then, but I'm thinking of it now.
Mr. Rewatch, are you just looking at us like we're all crazy? You know never-ending story, right?
Yeah,
So I completely forget the story of it, which is why I'm thinking I'm just going to take this in and maybe watch that later too.
Don't watch the sequels; they're trash.
For what it's worth, I don't get all the TV references they make, so we're good.
We are nothing if not children of the 80s.
Yeah. So yeah. So what do you think the real Elliot is like?
I derailed that train real fast.
Yes,
sorry.
you did.
It's hard to say.
I think he's like he is in the fantasy, this sort of happy-go-lucky person with these sort of a big imagination, you know, who just loves his fiancée and doesn't really question the company he works for or the government or the structure of society. I think he's, because that the pain and his rage have been compartmentalized for him, I think he is this sort of, I don't know how to exactly characterize him, but I think he's a lot less burdened than the Elliot we come to know.
I got the sense that he, like, I think that the Elliot, for lack of a better term, the alternate Elliot, because again, we don't think he's necessarily the actual real version, but the alternate Elliot, I feel like there were pieces of him that are actually actual Elliot. Like when what I take from it is when the Elliots are talking at the table and he's explaining his drawings and that he wishes he could be that guy and these are the characters that he created, and I think that he actually did create those characters and he became that character and he formed, like, I feel like those are connected, and I actually had a deeper thought on this that I shared a few months back on my Facebook group, and I can't remember it right now, but I feel like there's a connection in terms of what Elliot actually, like, what he's like in his life, but then the different, I guess, the masks and characters he's created and adopted, and it's kind of, I can't formulate the thought further than that, but I feel like there's a little mixture of yeah. Are you going to jump on that? Go for it.
Yeah, so what I got from the quote-unquote real Elliot was that he wasn't a complete person either. The reason he wanted those things is because he knew there was pieces of himself that he'd walled away, so something was missing, and that's what those other personalities were. So I don't think there was a quote-unquote real Elliot. I think there was pieces of Elliot in each one of the characters, and they're not a whole person until they're all combined again.
I would agree with that take, because the mastermind Elliot, even though he's the manifestation of the rage and the need to keep Elliot the whole safe from all of the bad things in the world, has moments of real vulnerability, has moments of real quiet introspection that have nothing to do with rage. So in that moment, is it really still the mastermind, or are these other pieces seeping through? Not just MrRobot. I think MrRobot does come out when Elliot's safety is threatened, or when the plan that made him a personality is in danger of being put off the track. I think it's much more about, I think we're seeing a lot of the real Elliot. We're also just seeing, if you think of it like investors in in a company, he's the controlling interest. We're watching the controlling interest. I don't know that the controlling interest is the happy-go-lucky side. I think that happy-go-lucky side has too long been buried, but there's that sweetness and innocence that he's lost. That has to be pulled back in to the whole again. I think we're seeing most of the real Elliot most of the time.
I relate it to, like, if you break a glass, which one of those pieces is actually the glass and which one's a piece of it, a shard?
Yeah.
That's an even better one.
Well,
Good analogy.
so I propose this question because it's something that I've been thinking of, and I'm not sure I can pinpoint definitive moments in the series. Is looking back, it's like, at what point have we gotten a snippet of the real Elliot or the non-mastermind or that part, that layer of him? It's something that I've been thinking about for the whole series.
I think when he kisses Angela on the subway would be a moment.
Yeah.
I think that was a real Elliot moment where all of the personalities came together to motivate him to make that something he was too scared or shy to do up until the point was that moment.
That's a really good point. That's a good moment.
And I think there are other moments in the series too. I can't think of one, but when
Yeah.
you were asking the question, that's the one that immediately came to the forefront of my brain because it took something in him to make that gesture at that point, to need that gesture, which the raging mastermind, the one who created F Society and proliferated this hack, was not comfortable even really connecting with her beyond that when we first met him in season 1.
But I also think, just in you speaking and us kind of talking about this before, was I feel like the moment when Darlene returns before he puts on the MrRobot jacket and stuff, that was probably, that could potentially be a piece of the real or the actual not MrRobot, the actual Elliot too, because he's talking about, got fired from this job, got to go to therapy, the way he wasn't talking about hacking. He wasn't talking about any of that until later in that scene. So that could potentially be another moment. I mean, I'd have to watch it a third time to figure it out, but
I know I might rewatch this one too.
I'm definitely.
I'm so glad that you're.
Adam's
I
gonna
think you
start
like
it,
this
and
show.
I told him, like, I'll watch it again with you. I'll
Yeah.
try my best to not say anything.
You better not ruin
I know.
it for
Do
him.
not spoil.
But he's upstairs now. He might have heard some spoilers.
Well, that's on him then.
So here's another question for consideration. Who's the real villain of the piece? Or is there one?
Oof.
I think Aaron should answer this one.
Oh, because I'm obsessed with the villain.
Good point.
So when I think about it, it's like almost everyone has a touch of villainy in them. Like, it's easy for me to point to any one character and say, except maybe Dom, but just to say, oh, and look at that harmful thing they did, or that destructive thing so-and-so did. So, who's the big villain? Because especially once we understand more, I think it's White Rose for a long time. But once I start to understand her motivations, I start to think, is she really a villain, or is she just misguided? Do I have some forgiveness? Or even for Terrell, who does terrible things, or Price, who I hate. I hate Price for so long in this series. So I really started to soften on, it's not so easy for me now to put people into camps or categories to say, aha, that's the bad guy in the show. Because even the mastermind, I think, we think that's the protagonist, and then I think we can also look at their actions and say, ugh, there's some distasteful things that they've done too.
I think you bring up a really, really good point, because as we've discussed earlier in this episode, is that we do discover these really vulnerable moments in the lives of who we perceived as the villains. White Rose, even Vera talks a little bit. We see him get emotional. Philip Price, I warmed up to when he started, with the whole Angela thing. He started working against White Rose and with Elliot, even though he had his own motivations. And on the flip side of that, the episode where we see Mastermind kill his alternate self, it was like, I was devastated. I was like, is this where we're going with this character? I don't feel good about this. It does play with the idea of who is the villain. And I do think that there is a good guy versus bad guy thing. I do think, Darlene mentions it, saying we Robin Hooded those,
Sons of bitches.
Yeah.
You can say it.
Well, no, she
says other things.
She says other things.
We can't say that word.
That I can't bleep out. So there's that sense of, who Robin Hood and his gang were, and stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, and all of that. So it does play with that idea of by the end of it, it makes you question a little bit, who. I don't feel like anyone everyone was the bad guy. I feel like there was more evil for some, but man, the show made you get a soft spot for some of those characters that you're like, I didn't expect that.
I think, too, one of the central themes of the show is, identity and who you are, and who you are is not black and white. And so,
Black and white.
Yes, black and white, back to the cars.
We're gray again. We're gray again.
But it's very true. It all exists in the gray area, and that's why, thinking of, okay, well, White Rose could be considered the villain of this series, but really, in the end of it, it's not that clear.
He talks about masks. Elliot says, what happens when your mask, you can't take off the mask. When you become the mask, you can't take it off anymore. And that's the part when you ask in your questions, what character are you? And the reason I chose Elliot was because I could relate to that, I'm part of him, or I'm part of that. Because it's yes, we all have masks, we all have these different layers to us, we all have the good and the bad in our lives, and some are revealed to people, and some we just keep to ourselves, but it informs who we are, and that's ever changing. So that's the reason. That's one of the reasons I chose that. So I think identity, when you bring that up as a theme, 100%, yeah.
Especially with that final monologue that Elliot has in the end, standing in front of the window. That's all about.
It's so beautiful.
Who we are. Yeah.
That kind of goes back to the previous question about who the real Elliot is, and I'd be like, well, it's all of them then.
Yes. Yep.
I would agree, and I also think in the end, the reason why I asked this question is because I think I landed on there's no villain. This isn't about villainy or heroism. This isn't about good and bad, and even building on the randomness of life that Dave was hinting to earlier. I will buy that for Joanna if we apply that forward to this moment and cinched off by the end monologue. We're all the summation of our choices. I don't know who says that originally. I can't quote him. Credit where credit is due. Maybe I'll research it for the Rich Post. But we're all a summation of our choices. And in this particular show, what we're watching is the extremes of where that can go. It's an extraordinary story of extraordinary people who've made extraordinary choices. But I do not think that they would consider themselves evil. White Rose would not see herself as evil. She would see herself as just. And Philip Price doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as pragmatic. And Elliot doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as taking down the evil. But he's doing it in, as was said earlier, nefarious ways. And I think that's just, I think that's where the black, the white, the gray, all the stuff kind of fall in. It isn't clear cut. It is random in some ways. It is guided by, this is kind of more of a fate versus free will question. Mm-hmm. Are we fated here or free-willed here? And White Rose, I think, is symbolic of fate, and Elliot is symbolic of free will.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Complicated by many personalities, of course. And his troubling history. That's my thought.
This would be a vastly different show if it was bad guys versus good guys, real, as we know it. As, take down the bad guy. We will never see the history of... We'll never see that vulnerable side of the bad guy. We'll only see their motivations. So I think I'm appreciative of the fact that that's a hard question to answer.
That's what I like about this show is it starts off, you think you're watching something about, hackers and society and bringing down the 1%. You think that's what this show is going to be about. And then it continues. And then you think maybe it's about time travel. Maybe it's about this. No, it's not about that either. So I love the way that this story is told and how it evolves, and I feel like it definitely paid off.
I will say that when it started to feel a little science fiction-y, I really enjoyed that. I was like, I like this component. I'm so nerdy. Yep. This is the greatest.
That's why I was so mad about not being answered about the machine.
There you go.
Spin-off.
So I'm gonna
graphic novel.
Let me ask a couple of wrap-up questions. Now that we've digested the whole show, what was your favorite twist? For me, it's the one that we've been watching a personality the whole time. I did not see it coming.
You know what? I'm going to go with that. I mean, there's so many, but that one I was like, excuse me? I didn't know that.
I would even go so far as to say masterstroke. I was like, whoa, whoa. Whoa!
That was my favorite, and kind of, maybe this isn't, I don't know if this is answering your question, but I'll go back to the role of Darlene in Elliot's life was, I did not realize until the series finale what she does for him, and that how important she is in terms of that. So those are my two right now. That's ever changing.
I would say the reveal of what happened to Elliot in his childhood, his sexual abuse. Like, God, that seems weird to say my favorite twist, but
it was surprising.
It was surprising to me, and it was so emotional, and I just felt so hard for him. And I love that the whole setup of that episode was different, and I feel like it handled that in such a, beautiful way. Yeah, I mean, I had tears in that episode for sure. So I think that was probably, because I've been wondering this whole time with Elliot, what is it that you can't remember? What is it what happened? What was it that was so significant about that window event? It keeps coming up, and it won't let up. So, something happened, but you didn't know what, and so that for me felt like a big reveal.
I think that was my favorite part of the story. I think my favorite twist, though, was the prison thing. Because that was just thrown in to throw in there. That was a twist for a twist's sake. Because that did not do anything for the storyline except for introducing to Leon. Everything else could have been told in a
that was a
different
really
way.
Fun twist.
I just like the twist. Just because they're like, you know what? We're going to do a twist within a twist, and here you go.
I agree with that, too.
Great.
I'm probably going to agree with all of these.
I know, it's hard to, every time one of you adds one, I just am nodding. Yeah, that was a really good moment. I think the Darlene twist is my favorite, though, as well. I really think seeing her significance, seeing Carly Chaikin's performance evolve over the course of the series. She's so impressive in season 4 to me. Darlene's role in X Society, all those little things we get to learn to know about her, I think those are all my kind of favorite revelations.
Yeah, I'm on the Darlene side because it's probably the first big twist where you're like, okay, this is the standard for the show. We're probably going to see some more kind of crazy stuff after this. Yeah, it kind of just set up the rest of the show for all the other twists, like the jail and, his father being MrRobot and him being a, I guess, personality, not a person.
That's my second favorite twist. She is my favorite character, though. I mean, I really like Elliot, and it'd be easy to say Elliot's my favorite. And I love Rami Malek in this performance. But I think I give the edge to Darlene being my overall favorite character just because of all the things you just said. But between the two of you, Aaron and Dave, I think he has the most rounded out arc in a sense, but hers in some ways is more nuanced and more relatable. So she ends up being a favorite for me. Is there any season that was your favorite? Or seasons? I can say...
I like 2. I think 2 is probably my favorite.
You said 2.
You said that last time.
That's the prison season. Jeremy, you act surprised.
I was just surprised that that's somebody's favorite seasons because for me that one dragged on a little bit more than the other ones. I would say 1 or 4.
I would say 1 and 4.
Those are mine too.
I'd say 3 and 4. But
I was going to say 1 and 4 until Dave said 2, and now I just am very conflicted.
Maybe more so 4. Because it feels so cinematic.
Yes.
It just they're set that the whole feel of that season is just elevated.
Well, and I also feel, on a smaller scale, I feel 1 is very cinematic, too.
Yes.
Because it's seeding the world. 4 just takes it up to, like, the
11?
top. Yes. The top of this scale. But I also kind of, I understand there are appreciators out there for 2. But I think 2 for me is probably the one that left me questioning in more of a dissatisfied way what was going on. Until the prison reveal, and then that was cool, and I appreciated it, but I remember just the feeling of getting to that point was like, what is going on right now?
Well, it's interesting because every season has an entirely different feel to it.
It does. Mm-hmm. And an entirely different, we talked about the music as far as the soundtrack choices. I mentioned this last time. Matt Quayle, as far as I'm concerned, is a completely brilliant genius scorist. And I think that I hope he gets more work. Okay? Because every season feels musically different, too.
Well, there's going to be a new season of American Horror Story, so he's got work.
Oh, does he do the music for that?
Dave, you and me should talk.
We have an American Horror Story series, okay? Co-moderated
that's one of my
by
favorite
me.
shows to ever be on TV.
I like you a lot more now, Dave. You know, you said season 2 was your favorite.
Okay, point of clarification. We're done. You You liked him before, right?
Yes. Just
He said even more. He didn't say I like you now.
It just had a thing.
if you tell me Coven's your favorite season, we're gonna be besties.
It was a good season, but it wasn't. I actually liked 1984 a lot.
Oh, haven't watched it yet. That's the one coming out. I know.
Dave, I don't like you anymore.
Yeah, that one gets shit on, but it's nice to see the series change.
If it beats
I mean,
Murder
changes every
House,
season,
I'll
but it's
floor.
nice to see that drastically change.
Applause if it beats Murder House. Nothing beats that for me. That's for the American Horror Story series. Listen to that. Find us on YouTube, couchpotatosunited@wordpress.com. What about the series finale of MrRobot? Was it a proper send-off for our characters?
I think it was a proper send-off for most of the characters. For Elliot, for sure. I think it was. I was satisfied.
It was perfect for Elliot.
Yeah.
And for MrRobot, to the extent that he's a character of his own.
Yeah.
It was perfect for Elliot. The one character we haven't mentioned at all is Tyrell.
Oh, yeah, we glossed right over him.
And there was a lot of dissatisfaction, I think, in at least robot Twitter world with the way his storyline was wrapped up. I would take a different view of it, though, where I think I felt satisfied by it. And I don't know if people thought about that.
I agree with you, Aaron. I felt satisfied by his ending, and there was still that little question mark at the end, which I liked.
Yeah. I feel like there were people who were dissatisfied, because I'm kind of with you on that in terms of the Twitter world, but also in the other social media forums, where people felt, it seemed as if they were dissatisfied, one, because people still speculated he was alive. Also, they weren't exactly sure because at the end of the episode there was that light, and they're like, "What is that?" There was no. At least I don't think there was any
and
answer
the weird
to that.
noise.
The weird noise.
Was it a dying deer or what was it?
Exactly. And then of course there's the extreme fans who had their own idea of what Tyrell should have been and how it should have ended, and it didn't end the way they wanted it, and so people got grumpy about that. But yeah, there's still a big question mark around him. But again, it doesn't really bother me personally.
Yeah.
See, I was just satisfied that we weren't going to have to walk through that forest with him for another half an hour, because that was starting to irritate me a lot.
I think that's where I would land. So it isn't my reaction to answer Aaron's question was not that I was necessarily dissatisfied with Tyrell's end and what we saw. It's that it was the cap of kind of a banal episode up until the point, and it seemed oddly misplaced in the season. Almost as if they were shuffling off his mortal coil to get him out of the way. I thought the whole thing was shot brilliantly. I loved the question mark aspect. To me, that felt fitting for Tyrell. I just thought it was weird to be, I think it was episode 5 of this season.
Yes.
And so I was like, wait, what?
Well,
Yep.
I thought it was hinting at what was going to happen when people died with her machine or something going on at the plant, because he saw that light, and I thought it was going to be something to tie into that, and then it just...
But I wasn't even registering the machine at that point, so I don't even know. That machine, that's going to haunt you,
Well,
isn't
yeah,
it?
because look at
That's your
Tyrell's
cheeseburger
dying,
bag.
and you see this light and these noises, and he's dying, and everyone else who died is dying to go to this other world, and I was like, where's the payoff?
And see, I like that. I like the not knowing.
That was
I like
very
that,
Twin
like-
Peaks, the end for him. Was
David
very
Lynch
Twin
again?
Peaks.
So
What's up?
many people have said that. So
Yes.
many people have said that. Yeah.
That's probably why I liked it. 'Cause I'm a huge David Lynch fan. I don't
I think
get
Sam
answers.
is too. I think Sam Esmail is a big Twin Peaks fan too.
Well,
That's what he said.
for Elliot, I think it was a good ending. I think his ending reminded me a lot, honestly. Was he in Vanilla Skies, too? Did he do something with that movie?
I didn't look at his
Rami?
film credits.
No, Lynch.
Oh, I don't know actually.
Vanilla Sky? No, that
Tom
wasn't
Cruise?
him.
Okay.
No.
It had a Vanilla Sky moment at the end of it for me, like you wake up at the end.
I didn't watch that because Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Understandable.
Fair enough.
What?
I said no Scientology for you. I was just joking.
Not for Tom Cruise. I can stomach it with other people. Well, that's for a different podcast, which is not ours. What did you guys think of the finale overall? Did you think it was proper send-off?
I felt to me that enough of my questions were answered. Not all of them, and I don't think I would have wanted, honestly, to have things 100% answered for me, because I think I'm the viewer who likes to imagine a bit of the story, too. And so I felt like I really got resolution on the Elliot story, and yeah, I felt at peace with it. I felt, it was a beautiful ending for this story.
It was beautiful.
And what you said kind of triggered something for me as well as, and because I agree with you, and I spoke to that a bit too. I think it is a beautiful ending, and I think part of that for me is that we were included in it, and we're part of Elliot, and the fact that I feel like I had closure on that felt good, where it was like, yeah, this is kind of my ending too, or my resolution, or my whatever that beautiful moment was. So
That's very meta. Do you think the show will hold up with the passage of time? Was it time for it to go? Would you have watched more seasons? Should it have ended sooner? Or was this the perfect number of seasons?
I thought the timing was good for it. I don't think there's anything I would have added except for answers to my questions.
What's
maybe
the
they need
machine?
a fifth season.
I think it'll hold up nicely as a snapshot of that sort of post-2009 economic crisis moment in North America. I think, when I was thinking, if I come to watch it in 10 more years, I think it'll call me back to that time. And I think I agree with folks who've said, I think there was enough story there.
I think it'll hold up in terms of the themes relating to media and to society and how we are so easily controlled, and what is front facing, what the news and media and the government will tell us versus what's going on in the background. I think that is the timeless component, because I don't see that changing anytime soon. And looking at history, that's always been the case. So while I also agree that it will be a snapshot, I think those themes are extremely pertinent and relatable and will carry through. Looking back, it's going to be one of those that timeless feel to it when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I think it ended at the perfect time. I think the show was well plotted, well planned. There were, again, have some quibbles with some things, but they're just quibbles. And Elliot's character arc was so well rounded. I do think there is a timeless component. And I think part of the timeless component comes in the fact that there was a nostalgia for technology that was older. The Commodore 64, the Apple IIe. You saw the stuff that was past brought forward. I think that will have a different resonance in the future. I think the nostalgia for the musical eras that were touched on from the very early 80s all the way up till now makes it less snapshotty than I think it otherwise would be, just because we're spanning decades and we're showing an evolution. And it will have a time capsule-y feel by its make, but there's that span that makes it almost a present-day period piece in the way it's told. So I actually think it will hold up. And it's so twisty, and it's an effective twisty, unlike that other show we mentioned the last time with the polar bears and the smoke monster and the island.
I agree. I think this is going to be a show that influences a lot more television as well.
Yes.
Because in terms of TV, it is kind of a more serious, abstract, not theological, but theory-based show, right? Where you got to think a lot when you're watching it. And I think we're going to see a trend of that outside of HBO shows.
Agreed. I know, it's mind-boggling that this was on USA.
That blows my mind.
I know.
Not traditionally the cable network known for such intelligent drama.
What else is on USA? Because we don't have it up here.
Briar Patch is a Sam Aspinall show, and that's on USA right now too. So he must have something with
He
USA.
must have a contract.
But let me tell you, I feel like MrRobot put USA back on the map in terms of television shows
Yeah, it did.
and networks. I mean,
Suits is on USA, right?
Is it?
Burn Notice was on USA.
I thought that was on FX.
Was Burn Notice? Was it?
Maybe you're right.
I have my internet offer.
I'm not saying that with a firm disagreement.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just trying to think of the tone. I mean, usually when I think of USA, I think of Law and Order SVU.
All that they air, it was on right before the episode, and probably right after.
Yeah, they do have Briar
Yeah, so
Patch.
this show really stuck out on the network then too, right?
It did. I mean, there are others that have kind of gained afterlife, like The Sinner has afterlife on Netflix, and I hear people talking about it in terms of watching it on Netflix, not watching it on the network. And you're the first person to mention Briar Patch, which actually segues into the next question. Sam Esmail, would you follow other projects he creates? This is the first thing he's ever created. As he's written, he's produced. This is his first television creation. I have this idea, and I'm going to have my hands on the whole thing throughout.
I would, although I have not yet tuned into Briar Patch. The commercials look amazing.
I for
We
sure
did an
would.
episode on Homecoming on Amazon Prime, which is awesome.
Yes, that's true.
I watched that.
Yeah.
You wrote it.
And that is a fantastic show. It's a short miniseries based on a podcast of all things.
Yeah, I knew that. I'm about to check it
I
out.
forgot that even existed. We saw ads for it at the theater I work at. And that's how I got into watching it.
It's on Prime.
See, I trust Sam now. So I'm like, yeah, I'll tune in when I find some time.
I usually get pushback on this question. I don't follow creators is what is the most common thing. And this is the precise reason why I asked this question. Because as I answer, I often clap back with, if Joss Whedon created something else tomorrow, I would sit down and watch it regardless. I don't care what it is. I feel the same way now about Sam because of Mr. Robot.
Big Sam, I call him Big Sam.
Big Sam?
I feel
He's
like-
a giant. He's so tall.
Have you met him and would you call him that to his face?
I never said I call him that. Thank you, Dave. Yes. Okay. I got some support. Okay, Mr. Rewatch here. They feel me.
So a lot of times, like with a lot of my favorite movies or shows or anything of the sort, it's usually, I categorize it by, especially with movies by director. You know, I like Martin Scorsese movies. I like Christopher Nolan movies.
Me too.
Wes Anderson movies. So
Julianne and I have a lot in common. All three of those directors, yes.
yes, and a lot of it is because they have a very specific vision and a very specific voice. And I really connected to what Sam Esmail was doing in this series. Like, you get me with the music, man. You get me with the music choices. But also the great cinematography. I mean, that just has, whatever his secret sauce is, it is all over that show. And so I want another taste of that wherever he takes it.
Fun fact. Did you know that he's the one, he Easter egged himself in the entire series, but you see him, he's the one who shoots Elliot up and says, "Goodbye, friend." That's Sam Esmail.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
You see, he's huge. He's just, I love the guy. I'm all Sam.
Hashtag Big Sam.
Yep.
Would you follow any of the actors to future TV projects?
Yep.
I mean, B.D. Wong,
Yeah,
I watched
that
in a
B.D.
ton.
Wong, like,
Yeah,
obviously.
And Bobby
awesome.
Cannavale, I've
Yep.
watched in a ton.
And I watched Carly Chaikin. I saw her in Supergatory, so I knew who she was before.
And Christian Slater
Yeah.
has a whole film career, so
I think everybody you've
he's
mentioned.
one of my teen idols, man.
He'll
That dates me. Damn
Heathers
it.
is actually one of my favorite movies.
Which one?
Heathers?
Oh,
That's
Heather's
classic.
is awesome.
Oh, it's
That is
Yes.
classic.
Yes.
I have thoughts. Agreed. But Rami, oh my gosh. I haven't even seen Bohemian Rhapsody.
You need to see it.
Oh, see it. I wasn't
And that's
a
not
big
even his
fan
first
before
movie.
I saw it, now I am. Yeah, see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love
he
Queen.
has something special about him.
I gotta shout out Mr. Rewatch. We did a Bohemian Rhapsody episode too.
Did you?
Really?
Oh.
Amazing.
I'll tune in.
Awesome. You agree you'd follow people?
The only one, I don't, there's a couple that I would follow, or if I haven't already, like B.D. Wong, I've already watched a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Same with you. There's a few that I wouldn't necessarily follow a show because of them, like Portia Doubleday. She didn't really inspire me to go follow her for any particular reason. I think she did well as in her character. So I already watched the ones that I would continue watching, I guess.
So you didn't. What you're saying is you've already followed. You're not.
Yeah,
Gonna change course.
I'm not changing what I already do because I'm already doing that.
Got it. Would you? This is the $1 million 100% question that Couch Potatoes Unite feels a social responsibility to ask. Would you recommend Mr. Robot to others? Why or why not?
You know my answer.
Say it for the podcast.
My answer is, of course, yes. Because
Amy recommended it to me.
I praise the show, but yes, I'm sorry for the benefit of the podcast. Absolutely.
Amy said, "When can we talk about Mr. Robot? When can we talk about Mr. Robot? When can we talk
Because
about
I knew that it would be a show that was right up your alley too. It was like, it's very smartly written. It's got layers. It's got something dimension we can talk about.
She's right.
I would recommend it and already have. My husband's just starting to watch it.
I would definitely recommend it. I don't think it's a show that if you are somebody who likes to watch television and scroll on your phone, that you can enjoy
Yeah, this
But
is
then
not the
why are you
second screen
watching
experience.
television anyway. You know, I always...
So you could be Gen X. That's what I say all
I
the time.
swear I am. I don't know why I'm a
You were born in
millennial.
the wrong
I
year,
will,
weren't you?
yes. I'm so sorry I'm a millennial. I'm really sorry, Mom.
We'll adopt you. It's okay.
Thank you. I know I am an 80s baby. 89. So I'm in there right
The whole room went, oh.
Just right past.
That's right. I'm borderline. So I'm in that, like, yeah, she and I are in that, like, nebulous.
Yes.
I think we're all the same age, yeah. Which side am I on? I don't know.
Mr. Rewatch, folks, would you recommend, I mean, you've talked about it, you've lived with it, you've interviewed a couple people. Where would you recommend it? Would you endorse it?
I think people might like me to recommend it less often. And I think for people who love storytelling, so Dave and I are also stand-up comedians. So I think when we talk about how do you structure a story, how do you evoke a feeling in a crowd, for anyone who loves storytelling, or anyone who ever is trying to communicate with an audience, I always say, you've got to see how they do it in this show.
Yeah,
Dave, would you recommend this?
I have recommended it. It really depends on the person. Like, I didn't recommend it to my mom, but I recommended it to my girlfriend.
Oh, God, no.
Jeremy said,
yeah,
"Oh God,
you know,
no!"
then,
to
yeah,
your
we've
mom.
spent
My
so
mom
much
would
of our
love this
lives
show.
with it. It's hard not to talk about it. It's hard not to say, like, yeah, it's a good show. Like, you should watch it if you haven't seen it yet. Why not?
I would recommend it. I jumped on Facebook, my chosen social media conversation piece, and posted right after I finished the series finale. If I were to give this a grade, I do work for a university in my day job, I would give it an A. Maybe not an A+, just for the little quibbles, but an A, because what an unusual show. I mean, there's a lot of good TV, and this is not an apples to apples comparison. Like, I can't hold this up to another TV show and say, this is a very unique TV show, very unique voice, a very unique way of telling a story. I agree 100%, Aaron. That's one of the reasons why we do this podcast, is because we're looking at the storytelling of scripted television. And if you want kind of a good example, if you were going to teach a pop culture class about how to tell a story in an elongated small screen format, I would use MrRobot as an example of it, because it's unique. And I think that if you want something fresh and new, it would be hard to recommend to my mom. Yes, I agree with that. I do not think she would like this show. But I think a lot of the people who are, I said that this has a very Gen X millennial sensibility, because this is our world right now. There's a lot of, he must be the same age as us around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it spoke to me on kind of a fundamental level too, like a basic, this is my childhood, now my future level. And I don't recommend things so strongly so often, but this one I probably would.
I think and that speaks strong. I'm so excited to hear you say that. Because, and I was personally, on a personal level, and Kylie's one of my closest friends, for those who don't know, is
Dynamics.
Because, well, here's the thing, you have this way of thinking about things, but you host Couch Potatoes Unite, you do a multitude of shows that are countless at this point, because you've done it for so long, that it's
Don't say it like that.
You've done a lot of shows.
Yes.
More shows than I've ever seen. So to hear, that's a testament to MrRobot, for somebody who examines television, on a variety of television on a regular basis, and hosts a multitude of panels on these television shows, asking the same questions, really, or looking at it the same way, and coming out and still saying, this is unlike any other show. I highly recommend it in a way that I've never recommended something before, or what have you. It speaks to the quality of MrRobot in every way. The storytelling, the casting, the acting, the directing, the music, the everything, the cinematography, all of it. And that excites me, and that's part of the reason I think it will be timeless, is that kind of response. I think it's cool.
I don't know how better to wrap up the episode, so at this point what I'll do is ask you, is there anything else, anything you haven't said that you want to get off your heart and mind right now about MrRobot?
I'm making a Spotify playlist. That is just, like, I'm doing it. I'm making a Spotify playlist of MrRobot, the songs that are included. Gosh, I'm sure it exists.
It does, actually.
But I think to make it for myself. Like,
You do you,
yes.
girlfriend.
Thank you. Because that's all I want to say.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And you'll share it with the group?
I will share it with the group.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, eagerly awaiting the playlist in question, what I'd like to do is thank Amy, Julianne, Jeremy, Aaron, and Dave from Mr. Rewatch for joining Couch Potatoes Unite to have this little retrospective on MrRobot. Because we've had this retrospective, and I think we've done it so completely, it's time to roll the credits.
Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros, and if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, the first 3 seasons of MrRobot are currently available to stream on Prime. We assume that season 4 is coming soon to an Amazon outlet near us, but you can buy it. It is available for purchase, you just can't get it with your subscription. We all found that out the hard way. If you have nominations for shows we should cover on our podcast, contact us via social media or email. You can volunteer to be a panelist too. In the meantime, and until next time, until next episode,